Very different. The vibe is very different. The crowd is very different. Again, people age a little older on this. The Holland America. I think the reputation is that Holland America has a bit more of a senior demographic, and I don't think I can dispute that. I think there are plenty of families too, but definitely the median age felt quite a bit older than I would see maybe on Royal Caribbean or Carnival, or probably close to Princess. That wouldn't be too different.
Welcome to Travel Stories with your hosts, Tom Kim and Trevor Mountcastle. This episode, we go back to the high seas. Not only the high seas, the North Atlantic high seas. Tom, welcome back from your adventure. I can't wait to hear about it.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So we've been doing a little bit of a different summer this year. I think both of us have with our travel. I think a lot of people do a lot of summer travel. I think we kind of take the counter approach to that. Other than just a quick 4th of July trip, I've been fairly sedentary, and I've been actually kind of enjoying being on the sidelines. But you, sir, you wanted to get at least one more big trip in.
Yes.
So take us to the port. How'd we get there?
Sure. So this started out with just a pretty standard trip to KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines, because I was going to Amsterdam. So, of course, one stop from Dulles. It was a pretty nice flight. Got to take my parents to the Chase Sapphire Lounge, which was, that particular flight leaves, I think, like at 5:20. So it was actually a great time to head to the Chase Lounge and really have it be not too crazy, which is nice because it started getting crazy as we left. One downside is with KLM is it is a very early flight. So, leaving at 5, I'm sure you've also done this from Europe, right? Leaving at 5 p.m. Like, who wants to get on the flight and go to sleep, right? So,
well, not only that, I'd imagine that you're landing fairly early too, and
it is.
Trying to get into a hotel or trying to acclimate to the new time zone has got to be challenging.
It is a challenge. So I did have a plan for that, but we'll get to that in a minute. But the flight over, hold your horses, don't freak out. I'm going to let you put your champagne glass down before I say it. I did fly economy.
Oh, well, thank you for letting me swallow first, because
I didn't want you.
We protected the microphone.
I know the microphone
Wow.
did not get sprayed with champagne, so that's good. But it was a wonderful flight, actually. I was extremely comfortable. I had poor man's business class because I had nobody sitting next to me on this A330, where it's like 242, I think, is the seating configuration coach. So I had my parents in two right in front of me. They said it was comfortable. I thought it was comfortable. Service was good. Even had a reasonable meal for economy. So really not too many complaints. And ultimately, we didn't really sleep on this flight at all because, it was about a 6-hour flight. Got into Amsterdam about 6:30 in the morning. We were exhausted, of course, but my plan was, and, this is kind of similar to what Michael Traeger talked about previously, right? Which is I had booked the Hyatt Place Amsterdam as our overnight hotel, but I'd gone ahead and booked the night before as well. So I knew that there was going to be a room there for us. So that was my strategy. We're not going to sleep. We're just going to get to the hotel and we're just going to collapse and take a nap and then wake up sometime in the afternoon and decide probably go get dinner, go do maybe a little bit of touring and then, go back to sleep.
I can totally see how that makes sense. I mean, if you're talking about leaving like 5, 6 o'clock and it's a 6-hour flight, you're landing at midnight or 11 p.m. or midnight. You're getting into the hotel probably by 1, 2 a.m. body time. You have a quick night's sleep, and then, you get some touring. Is that hotel downtown, or is that right at the airport?
It is right at the airport. I wouldn't necessarily say it's great if it's your first time in Amsterdam. It wasn't my first time, but it was my parents' first time. But, for them, I think as far as getting off the plane, getting on the shuttle, getting a room, again, I had booked the night before. Of course, one thing that didn't go to plan is when I got to that room that I had booked, it had not been serviced. It was completely dirty. So so I went back down and they did take care of it. And actually what they ended up doing is they just ended up not charging me for the previous night. So I only got charged for one night instead of 2 nights.
I'd take that as a win.
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, you can't do that. Yeah, can't beat that.
Yeah, but everything else kind of went to plan. So we took our nap, woke up, had some dinner, took the train into the city just in time to get kind of the last one of the kind of canal boats, that do kind of the tour of the waterways in Amsterdam. So my parents could do that. And we got to see a little bit of downtown Amsterdam. And then we rode the train back. And, this being Northern Europe, the sun went down pretty late. I mean, we got back to the hotel maybe like 10 p.m. or something. And the sun was just going down, I think, around then.
So it sounds like that really worked out well for you guys. I mean, taking, economy is never fun, but being able to take the economy flight and get the sleep and then still get a little bit of time in the city and not having to waste I say waste, quote unquote, waste a day of leave to try to get there a day early.
Yep. I think so. And, and I've got to say, for a 6 hour flight across the Atlantic, the economy experience was not bad at all. It was very reasonable and pretty comfortable. Again, this is lately, all my transatlantic flights have been economy, one stop over the Atlantic, and they've been working out so far. I've not been missing the premium cabins because, 5 hour, 6 hour flight, they're so short. If I had been in a lie flat situation, I would be very hard pressed, I think, to get like 1 or 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah, we had a similar problem when we went to Madrid where I think it was like a 7 or 8 hour flight. We slept as best as we could. I mean, the one thing that I'll say that JetBlue does better than anybody else is they give you a to-go breakfast. Like they give you a little like coffee in a can or an iced coffee in a can, some juice and some starch to get you through. And so you don't have to feel like you've got to wake up. You don't get woken up by like the clanking dishes and all that other stuff. But I'm slowly coming to that term that you're at.
I've been hacking away at you for I don't know how many episodes. By the way, I mean, I think some regular listeners will remember that I've made this comment about flying economy over the Atlantic more than once at this point.
Yeah, you've been wearing me down. I might actually see myself doing that going to like London, but London or Ireland. If I do that, I'll start there. We're going to start small. We're
Yes,
going to start
yes,
small, but let's not talk about the Atlantic. We've talked about the Atlantic. You had a cruise and you were sailing out
yes,
of Rotterdam.
yes, yes. So after our stay at the High Place, by the way, the High Place Amsterdam, for those who are interested, pretty nice hotel. I'm trying to remember what category it is. It might only be like a category 2 or something like that, but it had reasonable cash prices too. I think there was only like 100 euro or something per night. And it has a pretty nice breakfast, and they seem to be treating globalists reasonably well. So pretty not, and they do allow 3 people in a room. There are room rates. I don't think all the rooms allow it, but I think there are room rates, including on points, where you can have 3 adults in the room.
And that's a big deal in Europe, as
It
I
kind
think
of
we've
is.
covered a lot. Yeah.
Yes. So the trip started out interestingly. So we get to the shuttle bus. By the way, a little strange oddity here: the shuttle bus does charge on the way back to the airport unless you're a globalist. So it's strangely enough, pick up from the airport, no charge. Back to the airport, you have to reserve it, and there is a charge unless you're, I think, some type of high elite. And so we sign up for the 9:30 shuttle. I find out my mom has forgotten her phone, so we end up missing the 9:30 shuttle. And we end up on the 10 a.m. shuttle. And guess what? Who I see walking off the shuttle on the 10 a.m. shuttle as I'm walking on it? Somebody I know. So, of course, we love these, we kind of celebrate these little, surprises where you're in a foreign country, you're in a city, and you have an unplanned meeting with somebody that you know in the miles and points community. I know Trevor and I have had this many times, as it turns out, including with your father one time, right?
Yes, yes, yes. There was one time I was traveling with my father and my brother, and you just happened to be landing in
Happened.
Singapore. Just happened to be.
This thing
We
happens. I don't know why the serendipity happens, but it happens so frequently. And by the way, that's going to be, I think, the theme of this episode, by the way.
I think a little bit of that is, as I think Sam and Robert talk about, we travel in packs. I don't like to think that I just go with the flow and do whatever everybody else is doing. But the reality is that if somebody's finding space and they share it, others are thinking, oh, well, maybe that should be something I should look at as well. So we really do travel in packs, and I think that's I think that's a benefit. I think that's a feature, not a bug.
It is. And the person who I met, just to keeping our listeners in suspense, was Justin Bakula, Hurdy Gurdy podcast and all over the place. He's talked at a bunch of conferences, and he's a good friend of ours. I've pretty much only met him, I think, it's kind of unplanned or at various, I guess, conferences and where he's speaking or, where we're guests or whatever. But he was coming off of the same ship, the Holland America Rotterdam, which is the cruise that I had on this most recent trip. He was coming off of that cruise and going and staying at the High Place the minute I was leaving it. So we had a few moments of recognition, like, oh, hey, you're here, And of course, it was no coincidence because both Justin and I had done the Win Platinum status match back last year. And that's where this particular quote unquote free cruise came from, was a benefit of that Win match that I know a lot of people did. And so he had taken the Norwegian fjord cruise right before this one, and I had already done the Norwegian fjords recently. So I was like, I went ahead and chose this cruise, which ended up going to Iceland, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But again, that was the first of several surprise encounters with people in the Miles and Points community on this trip. I think I'd been watching Facebook, so I saw Justin's kind of feed. I saw that he was on the Rotterdam. So I was not surprised to run into him. I was like, oh, I knew he was coming off the ship that I was going to go on. So I thought, oh, there's always a small possibility that I'll run into him. But usually they're small. But, it just so happened just because we were late for the first shuttle, the second shuttle was the one he was on. So a little bit of serendipity there.
And I remember seeing his feed as well. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, wouldn't it be interesting if TK happens to just,
like maybe I was thinking the same
thing. It just seems pretty cool. So you took the shuttle back to the airport. I assume that there's some sort of taxi or train to get to the cruise port?
There is. And I want to talk about that for a second because, I had taken this before, but I didn't really appreciate, how seamless and how easy it is to do rail travel from Schiphol Airport, from Amsterdam's main airport. Their rail into the city, super easy, super quick, like 3 stops. Like, I think it's only like 20 minutes to the central station in Amsterdam. And then to Rotterdam again, there's like kind of a special express train there. And that only took I think it's only has like 3 stops, and it's like maybe like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that. Pretty quick to get to Rotterdam. So if anybody's thinking about, I have to, get a really expensive taxi or something from Amsterdam to get to Rotterdam, I'd say definitely take a look at the intercity rail as an option. Just get to the central station and then take your taxi, which is what we ended up doing. And I think that worked really well.
And I think that says something because, and I think we've talked about this in the past, so I don't think it's a surprise for any, or, something we've protected, but you were traveling with your parents and one of your parents is not as mobile as, as one would hope. And so if you're able to do the rail, not just into Amsterdam, but also down to Rotterdam, I think that says something for the level of accessibility for others thinking, if they've got to travel with kids where they're, because kids aren't as mobile as I think my daughter takes 3 steps for my one, so just want to highlight that the accessibility there, definitely a big deal, I would think.
Yeah. Because, it's kind of night and day than some other airports. Like I'm just thinking of Dulles, for instance, how long do you have to walk to get to the metro? I mean, it's rail accessible. You can take the local metro now from Dulles for those of our listeners who haven't been to the DC Dulles airport recently, that it does now link up with metro. But you have to kind of traverse the underground passage all the way through the daily surface parking lot. So it's a lot of steps. Whereas Schiphol, I mean, you walk in the door and it's like you go down one flight of stairs. It's the train terminal, it's the train station essentially, and you're there.
It's like they prioritize mass transit.
Yeah, well, and Schiphol, I think, is pretty efficient in the way that they lay out the airport. I mean, I don't think they have a ton of space, like for the terminal building or whatever. So I just think that they just squish everything together in a relatively efficient way. So, including the train linkage, where the number of steps you get to from taking the escalator or elevator from the train platform to check-in, it's not very far. So,
it's been so long since I've been through Schiphol that I have to take your word for it. I think I've flown through there once or twice, and we're talking, I think the last time I was there was 2009.
Wow, that's a while back.
I haven't avoided it intentionally. I just haven't had a need to get back there. We saw Amsterdam. We liked it. We had a wonderful time, but we sort of said, okay, well, we've been there. We want to go back at some point for to get out into the country, but we just haven't prioritized it over all the other wonderful places to go.
Well, and I got to say, for premium cabins, I mean, definitely the flight that from Dulles, it's an A330, not the most, it's like 222, not the most sexy premium product. And, if you're not a SkyTeam Delta, I flew through Schiphol a lot, but I for a long time was both a Northwest and a Delta Elite for many years. And that's why I felt like I did a lot of my Schiphol flying as I kind of transitioned more to One World and some of the other alliances and doing some more free agent stuff. This has been probably my first time to Schiphol in maybe 5 or 6 years at least. But I had used that train before, but it just reminded me, I think, having my parents and having to worry about mobility and stuff like that, that the number of steps, to do the train transit at Schiphol was remarkably short. Like the amount of steps we did getting out of the shuttle, the Hyatt Place shuttle to getting to the train platform was like, I mean, it's so quick, so fast, so short. It's almost, I can't think of another time where that kind of intermodal moving from plane to shuttle to train is so efficient. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
That's amazing. Okay, so we got to the Holland America Rotterdam.
Yep, yep,
How do we want to cover this? Do you want to talk about your arrival experience? You want to talk through some of the dining and
sure.
experiences, and then we'll talk to the ports?
Yeah, let's do that. So Holland America Rotterdam, it's a Pinnacle class ship, one of their newer ones. I think I think it's their newest one, and I think it debuted in 2021. It's my second time traveling on Holland America. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but they do the announcements in Dutch and English, and there were a lot of Europeans on, including a lot of Dutch, as you would imagine, leaving from Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Very very central port in the middle of Rotterdam. Pretty quick experience getting on board. They seem to be relatively well trained and set up. I guess this particular ship does frequent that port fairly often. I think it had quite a few week-long journeys prior during the summer. So again, this cruise, one stop in Norway, Allison, Norway, three stops in Iceland. So I'd never been to Iceland before, so I was able to cross off another country from the list. Let me talk quickly about the food, which is important for cruising. I talked to quite a few people, and I think the overwhelming thought was that the quality of food was very good. I know some other people who cruise Holland America who also cruise Celebrity, which is, I think, one of the better lines out there as far as from their reputation for food. They felt like some of the complimentary food was actually superior, right? And I could see that. I would almost say that, but I actually haven't cruised Celebrity in over a decade, although I started my cruising with Celebrity. But I thought the quality of food was very high, and we only did complimentary food. We didn't go to any specialty restaurants. We only did main dining room and buffet and the other kind of eating venues they had on the ship that didn't involve any money. And that worked out great. We were very happy with what we got that was included in our cruise fare. So
No, was that, as far as the main dining room, for example, was that a scheduled time, or was that like the kind of freestyle, like what Norwegian does?
we booked relatively late. I think I booked this cruise back in thinking like March or something for July, and I think at that time all the standard set time dining had already been filled up, especially the early ones. So we did the free time dining. But what I did is on the first day I went to the maitre d' and the reservation people at the main dining room, just said, "Hey, can you just make a reservation for us at the same time every day for like 5 o'clock?" And that's what they did, because we like the early dining and we like having the same table and same waiter that knows what your preferences are. Like, I always want my iced tea with lemon and sweet and low. So for the most part, they did that. So
That's one of the things that I think always separates a cruise experience from almost any other vacation experience. The ability to have the meal at the same time with the same waiter at the same table. You get this feeling like you're kind of like a local by like the second or third
yes,
day because they know what you want. That's part of, I think, the luxury of cruising.
I
Even
agree with
even if
you.
it's not like a luxurious cruise line. I mean, even Carnival can remember what your beverage of choice is.
Yeah, it's a luxury that you can have on any class of cruise line. And but Holland America is a little bit more premium. So, but yes, it was nice to be treated by name, know what my preferences were, and for the most part, they did a great job of. I don't know why I said most part. They did do an excellent job of remembering what my preferences were and kind of continuing that throughout the week.
What was the lobster tail situation there?
Oh, that's the interesting thing. The funny thing is, you're right. There was no lobster tail. There were other kind of little bits of seafood here and there. That is one interesting thing they didn't. I guess I don't know if people are not into lobster or it's not easy to source lobster in Europe. There was no lobster that was complimentary, but I didn't miss it. I think we had a lot of good. There were a lot of good beef options. That the quality was very good, and I think for the most part, people would find something they would enjoy. I think on the dining room menu. One thing, again, speaking about service and stuff, there were a couple of noticeable things on Holland America. Number one, they have twice daily housekeeping, which a lot of cruise lines have gone away from. So they still do it. They have complimentary room service. We used it for breakfast one day, and it included warm dishes. I know sometimes they include room service for breakfast. Sometimes it's just the continental offerings and not like eggs and sausage and things like that. But this one they did have, and they did a pretty good job with that. Not great for late dining, though. I think your last opportunity to get something to eat is maybe midnight. If you're a late owl or a night owl, which is easy to do, by the way, on a cruise like this, because this cruise, went pretty close to the Arctic Circle. So there was a lot of midnight sun on this cruise. I'm like out there at like 11 p.m. looking out my window, and I'm like, what? It looks like 4 p.m. outside. So
Oh yeah, it just throws you off. It's like midnight, 2 a.m., and you're still at like twilight, and it's just so easy to lose track of time on that having. Well, I mean, you've done this cruise just the same as I have. Well, you've done the Nordics, I should say, getting all the way up to Iceland. Okay, so you are, I would say, a rather astute critic when it comes to live entertainment on the ships. I know that Royal Caribbean, you've pretty much stated, is top bar, or is best of class, so to speak.
I think you're right there. Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that statement. I think Royal Caribbean, for entertainment, their budget and what they offer is pretty hard to beat, especially on their bigger ships.
So how does Holland America rank?
Very different. The vibe is very different. The crowd is very different. Again, people age a little older on this. Holland America. I think the reputation is that Holland America has a bit more of a senior demographic, and I don't think I can dispute that. I think there are plenty of families too, but definitely the median age felt quite a bit older than I would see maybe on Royal Caribbean or Carnival, or probably close to Princess. That wouldn't be too different. The big thing, obviously, was just the number of Europeans. But going back to your original question about the music, there's a real focus on music on Holland America. Some of the decks are like named after like Gershwin and Beethoven and Schubert and stuff like that. And there's like a lot of artwork that's got like records or musical themes or other things. And they're really big on live music. So they've got like a dueling piano bar, which was very good. I attended that. I enjoyed that. They have a rock band. They have like a BB King's blues bar or blues venue. Again, the entertainment was not as I didn't really actually go to the main theater because none of the shows or the things that they were providing were all that interesting, to be completely honest. So I ended up doing a lot of skipping on that one. But the live music was good, and I think if you're a music lover, I think you'll probably find something to enjoy. If you're looking for an ice show or acrobatics or a Broadway musical, I don't think you're going to find it on Holland America.
I think it's helpful, for our listeners to sort of know that going in. Not every ship, but every cruise line is different and prioritizes different things. So it's good to know that if you are a music fan, that you're going to find plenty of wonderful options. It sounds like on Holland America.
Music is not the only thing I found on Holland America. So this, again, going back to the theme of this episode, it was kind of amazing that during, I think, the second day, I think it was the second day of this cruise, I'm up in the buffet, waiting in line. This was kind of like the evening buffet. They actually have this kind of 1 hour between like about 10:30 and 11:30 where they open up the buffet for one last final hurrah for the people who want, a late night bite. And I did want a snack at that time. So I'm sitting in line. And of course, there's somebody that I know from the Miles and Points community that is a mutual contact, a friend of Trevor and myself, who is right there.
And are we talking about Jim in this case?
We are talking about Jim in this case. So this is our good friend Jim. He's attended. I think he attended a few of the reselling dues, right? Or definitely worked with you on some of that stuff.
I think he's attended some of the reselling dues. He did work with us. We partnered on. We did a lot of Legos back in the day. And he is a good friend. He's a good friend and definitely an avid Mile and Point person. It's funny because I think he texted me before you texted me saying, "Hey, guess who I see?"
Well, part of it was he bought the internet package. I did not. So you got my text the next time we were in port, whereas I think he was able to just, send it to you right away.
I tell you, it's such a small world because the funny thing is like he had shared his itinerary and so they're on this really long trip.
They are.
I mean, they
impressive.
went to, I think I've lost track of all the places they've been. Like they spent like a couple of weeks in Bali. They went and they did safaris. I was following them with the safaris down in South Africa. I think they opened the Park Hyatt, or maybe they were a day late in Johannesburg.
I think they opened the Park Hyatt Johannesburg. I think they were there along with some guy from the Points Guy. We should have him on as a guest. He had some great stories to share about his summer travels, and he's very much a different creature than us. I think he takes this opportunity to travel with with his family during the summer. And I think it's a great idea. But, for us, I mean, I think he also has a little bit more flexibility based on, what he does for a living and everything. So I think they can make that schedule work.
Oh, absolutely. And that offer has been extended. Right now, obviously, they're still traveling.
Yes.
He might hit almost every continent. I don't know. I don't know
Yes.
if he's going to
Yes.
hit South America, but I feel like he's gotten to just about every other
I
one.
feel like he's sailing in Alaska right now, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think that is the case. Yes, yes. I'm sure he's got plenty of stories if he'd like to come on. But it sounds like you also had another chance encounter. If I'm sneaking in the notes,
yes, you are sneaking in the next part of the story, which is just ridiculous. Like, why am I running into so many damn people on this trip? So the next day, I go to the trivia, which is in one of the bars. So I sit down next to some random couple that I don't know. And I'm sitting there enjoying the trivia, and then in walks somebody that we know. Again, another mutual friend of ours, Deb Schroeder, who's we've had on this podcast. She was, of course, also doing the win match, so she had also gotten this for cruise, and so of course she was on this cruise too. It's just the coincidences.
and what this is telling me is I'm not spending enough time in Vegas. The single unifying moment or data point for all four of you is that you all did the win match. And
No, oh, you're wrong though. See,
oh,
so
really?
Jim did not. He paid for this cruise, but he did pay for it with a lot of Amex cards that had a Holland America Amex offer. So I think he was exploiting the American Express. I also exploited that, but only for just one of them. I only did one Amex offer that I think was like 250 off of 800 or something.
You're right. Yeah. I think I might have helped a little bit with that too.
Oh, really?
He's always, that's one of those things, like, I try not to talk too much about that on a public forum, but I mean, if you've got a bunch of these cards, if you did the card pointers for lifetime, it adds all your stuff. And so, if you make friends, other friends might have needs, for some of those offers, and where they have the flexibility to be able to make multiple payments, as long as, you build the trust, and sometimes you can split the benefits. 50% of something is a whole lot more than 100% of nothing, considering I don't see myself getting on Holland America anytime soon.
It's a good tip to point out that there are these Amex offers that come up pretty frequently. For Carnival, for Holland America, for a number of the cruise lines, and
Royal, even.
Royal, yeah. So what you can do is, if you have a cash fare on a cruise that looks attractive, and one of these offers are sitting around, don't make one payment. Split up your payments. Do the deposit right up to the amount, hopefully, or maybe some extra. And work with your travel agent, work with the people you're booking with, so that you make multiple transactions up to the limit of the threshold of the Amex offer, and you're good to go.
There's more to it, isn't there? You were going even further on that, sort of trying to get greater value or get a better deal, so to speak, or
We'll share one more thing. These are not necessarily supposed to work, but I did do some purchases. Like I bought some excursions, I bought some room credit on the Holland America website using this Amex offer, and it did trigger. So what I paid for this cruise was not going to be enough anyway. Would not meet the threshold for the Amex offer. So I did book some stuff on board through the website, and that did trigger the Amex offer. So we'll share that with our listeners and say that isn't something you can look out for. Not always going to work. I've had this with other cruise lines where some work some of the time, but strangely enough, I think I have a higher success rate than failure rate. How about that?
You got to try things. We say that a lot. You've got to try things. You tried something else too, though. Didn't you try gift cards as well?
I did. And, you can get gift cards. There was a pretty reliable way back in the past. It was like AARP sold a lot of these gift cards, but that is another in the trash heap of history. They do not, that no longer exists. But there are lots of other places you can go and get discounted gift cards for Holland America, Carnival, other. And my experience, I only did a little bit. I didn't go too crazy with this, but I did, in fact, buy some gift cards and redeem them on board, which was a very easy experience. I went up to the front desk or the guest services, gave them the gift card number, gave them the PIN number. Maybe it was like a 1 or 2 minute experience, and boom, I had credit in my account. Can then just go to the casino and cash that out. I mean, obviously, don't want to be doing that too much because they will probably shut you down. But if you play through a little bit of it and maybe enjoy a little bit of gambling, another manufactured spend opportunity.
Great. I really want to get to the ports, but you brought the casino up. So let's close out onboard experience with how the casino was. Was there anything was there any compelling reason to to gamble, like know that the what is it, casino Club Royale on Royal has the the different status levels that can lead to the freebies that are fairly transparent, I'll say.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so tell us about Holland America. Is it a compelling casino to spend time in beyond just the joy of gaming?
I think it's probably pretty similar to Princess. I mean, they're both owned by Carnival Corporation. They're both kind of premium cruise lines. Holland's character is a little different. The DNA and the culture is a little different. Definitely feel the Dutchness of it, I guess, and just like some of the way that they have decorated and outfitted the ship. From a casino perspective, though, 1,500 points is when they start giving you free booze, which was nice because I didn't buy a drink package either. So the first day or two, I was kind of grounding, or I managed to go an entire 24-hour period without Diet Coke, believe it or not. Again, I probably should have waited till you had that bite, Trevor, before I said that. Because again,
Wow. Mark the
I'm
date
glad
and
you didn't.
time.
And then later, I realized they have a happy hour where you can buy beverages for like 50% off. So I actually bought some Diet Cokes. But later on, I realized, I could just gamble 1,500 points and then drinks in the casino were free. So like, well, that's probably even better. And that's what we did. We did get to that level relatively quickly within this first 2 days or so. So that's one benefit. The other benefit is, again, if you gamble a certain number of points, I gambled, I think about 3,000 to 4,000 points. It's not a huge amount. I got a offer for some free play and some $500 off of my next cruise from Holland, which was not too amazing. My mother, I think, gambled a bit more. She did like maybe between 4,000 and 5,000, I think, points, and she got an interior up to I think a 12-night cruise. So again, some offers were sent out. Again, thing I don't like about Holland, and actually I think Princess and a lot of these Carnival companies is they do not for the casino gambling. They don't have too many hard and fast numbers of like you get to this number of points and this is what you will get. Royal is much more upfront. You can go to the host, look at a QR code, and you will know if you do 1,200 points, 1,500 points, 2,000 points on this cruise, you can get a list of which cruises will be offered to you at the end of the cruise for obtaining that amount of coin in for gambling. So I do enjoy that about Royal, and I believe Celebrity is very similar, although with much higher point values. But both of those owned by the Royal Caribbean Group, they're much more straightforward, and they're much more straightforward about how to become an elite member of their gambling program, where it's basically Prime membership, which is 2,500 points, $12,500 of coin in. You will automatically be entitled to a 7-night interior cruise on all but a few embargoed sailings.
We might talk about it at another time, but that's one of those psychological things that has definitely caused me to gamble more, because I know that if I just get to that 2,500 points, then I'm going to get some level of return on my gaming. I'm not going to call it investment.
Yeah, there's something you can work toward. It's a defined benefit, right? It's not this kind of ethereal, ambiguous thing that's sitting out there. I don't know. I think Carnival Corporation thinks like, oh well, if you're into gambling, let's not give them the answers to the quiz. Let's let them figure it out, right? And they'll figure it out by gambling a lot to whatever their limit is. Royal is a little bit better, at least because you kind of know, and there's a pretty good chance, I think, on Royal Caribbean, at least my experience has been that the value of what you can get out of it, you can gamble a few $1,000s and get a few $1,000s or more value. Whereas, I think in casino gambling, especially on land, in Vegas and some of these other places, you can gamble a few $1,000s and you can get back a few hundred, like, oh, we'll give you a room, at the hotel that might be worth, $100 or something versus, the cruise where you maybe the same amount of gambling, you might, actually get 7-night cruise that you would have had to pay, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 for.
Yeah. Okay. We got to get to ports.
Yes, let's talk about ports. We talked about the ship. We talked about the cruise line. We've talked a lot about Holland. And I just got to close out with the cruise portion with just saying it was just amazing seeing Jim and Deb and just keep running into people. The coincidence is crazy, but it really made my cruise very interesting because, I got to hang out with some of them and have some fun cruise miles and points conversation on this cruise. But let's move on to the ports.
You can never beat that.
Yeah.
And
Nope,
there were people in the community in Iceland at that time. So I was actually wondering whether or not you were going to like strike fate like another time.
I would have just been blown over. Blown away. We did have a quick stop in Norway and Alisund, which I thought I had been to, but I'd actually been to Haugesund, not Alisund, in Norway. So when I got there, I was like, wait, this looks very similar, but it's different. So I'm like, okay. So we did a quick touristy train thing with my parents, and I got to see a couple of the viewpoints and stuff, and see the this little Nordic town. But nothing too much to write home about. The weather was nice, very warm. It was like I think it was like in the upper 70s or 80s in Norway, which was a heat wave for them, I'm sure.
And that's definitely different. So do you know the history of Ålesund and why it looks so different than so much of Norway?
Well, I was told in the train that we took that there was a huge fire and that much of the town was rebuilt in a particular style of architecture following this great fire. I think 19, I don't know, 10, 14, something in the early part of the century.
1904.
1904. There we go. So I didn't remember the year, but I remembered, and it's I think like a Nouveau classical kind of architecture or something. I forget. Maybe it's
Wikipedia says Art Nouveau.
Art Nouveau. There you go. I was searching for the words.
I'm trying to see because my recollection is that at the time that it rebuilt, Norway was a fairly poor country. Ended up having, I suppose, some level of help from Kaiser Wilhelm or one of the
One of the
German
German
Kaisers.
kings had heard about this and sent a lot of aid there. And I forget exactly how Norway and Germany were aligned at the time, but I think there was some sort of connection. So they were definitely subject to some help and some donations from the German crown at the time. So definitely some German experience or influence down there.
You've been to so many different Norwegian cities, and I've been to a handful myself. It just felt like a different world. It felt like some place that was mixed between like Southern or Central Europe and I don't know, like a
Oh, I didn't
colorful
realize.
place.
Have you been to Ellison?
Yeah, yeah. I went in 2022.
Oh, okay. I did not know.
Of course, when we were there, it was raining for the walking tour. We did that with Dia
Oh, that's
and a
I
handful of
totally
folks.
forgot. So, of course, here I am thinking, oh, I've always been on a cruise with Trevor, but Trevor has been on some cruises without me. So, I keep thinking about our Baltic cruise when I think of that part of the world. I don't necessarily think about your Norwegian exploration there on Carnival.
It was only like 2 weeks later. It was one of those really repetitive summers of travel. But okay, how many days is it to sail from Ålesund through that beautiful, beautiful fjord into the North Atlantic, where I'm sure that you slept well? I know that in the North Atlantic, I always sleep quite well because the seas are usually, shall we say, not calm.
This ship did not do much rocking, and of course I did sleep well, but of course the just looking out, just I had to make sure the curtains were pretty tight again because we got pretty close to the Arctic Circle there, and they actually print out a little certificate for you saying, oh, you navigated the Arctic Circle, because of course we kind of touched it on one of the sea days. And there's one sea day between Ålesund and our first trip in the capital of the north of Iceland. I'm gonna have to let me look at how do I pronounce this here. This is going to be the hardest part of the show, by the way, guys, because now we're gonna have to pronounce ports in Iceland. Akureyri, I think, is close to what it's supposed to be. That was the first port, and actually the largest of the ports that we visited.
So I guess that really does sort of give you an indication that Iceland is much more Euro focused, perhaps, if that's where
Yes.
their largest port is.
Well, and the funny thing is, like I didn't realize until I think I left the country, like I technically didn't leave Europe, because I didn't realize until we exited the airport that, you know, I think Iceland is part of the Schengen zone. The passport lady at the airport was like looking for the stamp from Amsterdam to stamp next to on our way out, and I was like, oh, why are you looking for the stamp? I'm like, oh. Because at first I thought I need to explain that I had arrived via ship, so there would be no Iceland stamp for her to stamp next to. But no, she was looking for the EU stamp, which was in fact. So I was being educated there. But anyway, that was just an interesting thought. But yes, they don't use the euro though. They've got the Icelandic kroner. It's their currency. I did end up paying for a couple things in euro denominated currency. In any case, the north, that largest city, we paid for an excursion, which was very lovely, and I think ended up being a really good choice. One of the big highlights of that particular excursion was the Maivatn nature baths, which are these geothermal spring-fed swimming pool, right? with this beautifully, blue water that is based on, all the different like minerals and silica that's in this water. That's, pretty stinky actually because it's got some sulfur and some other stuff. But, you get used to it and you don't notice it so much later. But beautiful, warm geothermal bath, very similar to the Blue Lagoon, which is the famous one near Reykjavik, which is usually very busy, especially if you're going to go in the summertime. And I think we kind of lucked out because this one, even though there were two cruise ships in the port, there were quite a few people, but you weren't like on top of each other, which was kind of cool. And as it turned out, the Blue Lagoon, had we wanted to go, which could have been a possibility, would have been closed because a volcano was erupting close to it. So, had we wanted to do this kind of experience where we went to this geothermal bath, this one that's in near the north there, in one of the northern cities there, was probably going to be one of the better options.
That's something we missed out on, and I'm so happy that you guys got to do it. So looking at the notes, there was a waterfall as well, huh?
There was a very famous waterfall, the Godafoss waterfall, and the reason why I think it translates into waterfall of the gods. It's a fairly impressive waterfall. I mean, compared to like other ones in the world, though, it's no, Niagara or Victoria or Iguazu, but it's still pretty and very nice and worth a visit. It's historically significant because when the country of Iceland converted to Christianity, one of the leaders of Iceland threw a whole bunch of their Norse gods, icons of these Norse gods, into that waterfall. That was kind of signaling the beginning of Christianity, and that's why it's called the Godafoss, waterfall of the gods, because he threw out all these Norse gods, Odin and Thor and all these guys, into the waterfall.
Must have laughed at Loki going down there.
Maybe.
That's a really cool thing. I hadn't known about that. Anything else in? I'm not going to try.
I was going to have you try because that's a fun part of this. Have you tried to pronounce these things?
Well, how about I try the next port?
Oh, okay, good idea. No,
So-
no, I think this was actually a pretty long excursion. It was about 5-6 hours, and I was kind of a little perturbed when I looked and I saw how much the actual entry fee to this bath was, because I think the entry fee was only like $50, and I think I paid $250 for this excursion, although before the American Express, credits and everything. At the end of it, I think we're pretty happy. It was a pretty long excursion, and we didn't have to worry about being late to the boat because we bought it through the cruise line, and ended up being pretty happy with it because it was a pretty full day with this excursion.
Well, and who knows how much car service or a taxi would have cost.
Oh
Everything
my
is
God.
incredibly expensive in Iceland.
Iceland is incredible. I mean, that is absolutely the truth. I'm so glad I didn't have to buy too much in Iceland because everything is expensive there. So yes. So the next one. Okay, go ahead, try it.
It's a fjordur?
I think you're pretty close. I think that sounds close enough. This was just a little, and the interesting thing is, as we went on in this cruise up until where we disembarked in Reykjavik, each of these ports were increasingly smaller. So I think it went from like population of like 40,000 to a population of like 8,000 to a population of like 4,000. So it was interesting how every single port we went to got smaller and smaller. We actually just got off the boat and just kind of wandered through the town a little bit. And my mom was feeling tired, so we didn't actually do that much in this port. But it was just just a little fishing town. And I think there were a lot of tours you could take. Again, a lot of them were expensive, like $300, $200. To get some transportation to go, do whale watching or go visit a waterfall or something. And we didn't do that in this port. But we did do it in the next port because we weren't expecting it. But at this port, there was actually a tour you could buy for about €50 that would take you to the Shark Museum and a waterfall, which is what we ended up doing. Took about two hours or so. Got to have some Greenland shark. They actually served you fermented Greenland shark, which is a very rare thing and a delicacy in Iceland. And I can tell you that Greenland shark, by the way, is toxic if you eat it without it. It is an animal that is a scavenger that lives in the bottom of the ocean, can live up to 400 years, and does not expel urea from its body. It kind of uses that as antifreeze, so it doesn't freeze in those like negative whatever waters at the bottom of the Greenland Sea. So this one family has, mastered the art of fermenting this shark so that's edible because it kind of exudes its ammonia and urea after, some number of months being fermented in a drying house. Got a little bite of that. Nothing to speak home about. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a delicacy in Iceland, and I did get to try it. And there was another small waterfall that we went to at this. You have to try to pronounce this at
Oh, Grundar Fjordur.
exactly.
Now, did you see any of those short, the like almost pygmy horses?
There were horses we saw. They weren't pygmy horses, though, the ones that we saw. I'm sure there are some, and I know they have these very hardy horses in Iceland. The ones we
The
saw
stocky
from the
ones, yeah.
bus were just pretty, they didn't look particularly distinctive, but I'm aware that there are some pygmy or kind of shorter type horses there as well.
Yeah, I remember seeing them when we did part of the Golden Circle tour, and I mean, you could tell the difference because they were low to the ground, they were stocky, they had the long hair, they were very, I thought, distinctive. Okay.
Well, so I'll just talk real quickly. I think the only last thing to say is, we disembarked in Reykjavik. Didn't really do very much in there other than leave and go through the Keflavík Airport on an ultra low cost carrier play, which I don't think you're going to have the opportunity to do much of flying from North America pretty soon because they're ending all their routes to the U.S.
Oh, that's such a shame. I mean, it was such a great idea for, and they weren't the first, right? So Iceland Air, and then there was another one like Go or something.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, now you're making me think about what. Yeah, what was the name of that? It was Wow.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds right.
Wow. I think these are the same people. They're some of the same people from WoW that did
Kind,
play
kind of like how Norwegian Air Shuttle became whatever
Norse.
Norse. Yeah.
Yep.
So
It didn't work the first time. I guess it's not working the second time.
it's a shame. I mean, who wouldn't have thought that Reykjavik to BWI would be like such a winner?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was completely full. I mean, they definitely sold the seats, but I guess it's not, for whatever reason not. Maybe they don't sell. Maybe it doesn't sell out all the time. But nothing to write home about. It's ultra low cost carrier. I actually kind of packed differently than normal. Like I used smaller book bags. I was worried about them being strict about measuring and things like that. And turned out they did it. But whatever. But we were prepared. I was again very happy that there were 2 priority pass restaurants at Keflavík Airport. So we did not have to pay for food, which was very expensive. I think it was like I had a Pepsi at one of these touristy places. I think it was like $7 or something like that. I think like my dad had a bowl of soup. I think it was like $15 or something. So Iceland is expensive for food, I got to tell you, and I'm glad we didn't have to pay too much for food. Although we did spend more than enough on other things like tours and the taxi cab from the airport, which is pretty far. I mean, I think it was a good 40 minutes or so taxi ride from the cruise port to Keflavík Airport, and it's not too close to downtown, as it turns out. So that was a good 160, $70, I think, is what I paid for. Although I did go through like Viator, and they had like, I think 10x at one of the shopping portals, so that was kind of nice.
Every little bit. Yeah. And
Every little bit
they've got
helps.
those little circles too. I
Yep.
remember.
I was also very happy to be able to make some onboard purchase. Bought a Play airline model for my collection. Haven't assembled it yet, but also plan to reimburse that to my Ritz Carlton card. So that'll be nice to get some onboard purchases reimbursed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I forgot that was a benefit of the Ritz. That's
Yes.
we probably need to talk about that at some point. The unsung cards that still stay in our wallet.
Yes. I think
Although
the
we
Ritz
might.
Carlton card. That's a good one. I mean, you can still product change into that, and it's a good one. $300 incidental credit. I mean, again, I paid for my Play airline luggage allowance because we did check one bag, and that was like about $80 to check that bag.
It's funny. Robert and Sam were talking about the Strata Elite and how I think they're going to force product changing of the Prestige to that. And
I
it was
really
just
hope
making me think
that
of.
is a rumor and not the truth because I do love my Prestige. That had more than a bit of a workout on this past trip.
Yeah, we might have to do a little ode to the cards, to the lost cards of our wallet if that does come to pass. Those rumors.
There are some good ones in the annals of former cards that have what is it, a warm memory in my heart. I'm sure in yours as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so bottom line it for us. Holland America, gonna cruise them again? Gonna go out of your way?
I think we are. I mean, we have some free offers that we got from our gambling, and we gambled some. We didn't go crazy, but I think we definitely left a little bit of money on the boat in the casino area. Less so on other things, like again, we didn't pay too much for drinks or meals or other things, but casino got a little bit of business from us. And my parents they enjoy their gambling, and these days a lot of their gambling is on board ships, which is beneficial for more new cruises down the road.
There you go. You're just paying it forward.
Yep, that's right.
or something like that.
We're paying at the office. So
Okay. Well, as always, thanks for sharing that. I know that our listeners do enjoy the cruise aspect. I think of the stories that we do share. I think that's probably one of the niche areas that we probably cover a lot more in the Miles and Points community. And I, for one, learn something new every time too.
I'm excited to hear about your cruise that's going to be coming up here in the not so distant future.
Oh yes, September, sailing on one of the biggest ships in the Mediterranean. I'm curious of how that'll be received, especially given some of the tone of people, the tone of local residents with
Yeah, I hope you're
tourism.
not going to Nice. I mean, I think I saw that there was the mayor of Nice was like actively boycotting a Royal Caribbean ship that was trying to dock there or something.
Oh gosh, I think we're going to Marseille, but
Okay,
last
good.
I looked, they had fires, so I don't know if it's any better. Okay, well, why don't we shall we close it out?
Let's do it.
Well, that's the show. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you've enjoyed listening.
If you've enjoyed this episode, consider becoming a Milenomics Patreon member and get access to even more in-depth miles, points, and travel content.
Until then, we hope your next story is a travel story.